name of the program is The Way to Go, and I invite you to join me each week at this time as we explore places to go and things to do. Today we're taking a trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art on 5th Avenue and 82nd Street in New York. And this is a little bit of a different program because we're going to be talking about two phases, two exhibits, which are at the Metropolitan. And one is in the 17th century, and the other, although it maybe starts a little bit in the 19th century, but is very, very current, and it's mostly 20th century material. Let's start with the 17th century. The museum, I could read to you from some of the material that they provided. The museum has an exhibit of 17th century gold leaf paintings on sliding panels, and the origins have been traced to a remarkable Japanese Zen temple. The interesting thing about this exhibit is the fact that they had no idea where these panels came from, except through a discovery that was made, a most unusual discovery. Removing a metal clip on the painting, they discovered a number. And then they removed it from the others, and they discovered that the 4 panels that they had were numbered 14, 15, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And the reverse sides were numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, which indicated that there were 4 other panels, double-sided, that were missing, which gave them a hint that perhaps these panels came from a very, very large exhibit. Now, the amazing part of it is in the restoration work that was done, on the back of some of these paintings were discovered pieces of scrap paper that were used to patch them. And through these patches, through these pieces of scrap, they found material which identified the location. Really remarkable that they would pick up these little scraps of paper and find from that the names of people, the name of craftsmen who had done the work, which brought them closer to the origin. The further step was that where they now felt that it came from was destroyed by fire, and someone had written a whole catalog which described the panels. So these 3 steps brought these panels, which originally had come to the museum 1979, now into the situation where they could identify them and opened up an entirely new world of information on what was going on. So this is a really remarkable, in a great sense, exhibit, and I urge you to go down and see it. And one of the things about the museum is that you can go and see so many different things at the same time. They publish a program, and this program will give you a great deal of information of what's going on all the time in all seasons. I urge you to go there. So now let's go from the Japanese screens to something that's more modern and something that we identify with today. Today, we're going to be really going into the subject of, believe it or not, baseball cards. And my guest today is Elliot Davis, who is the curator who is responsible for the baseball card exhibit, which is now at the museum. And I want to start, Elliot, by just reading from a story that appeared in the Daily News, which the headline says, "Card Display a Hit. Let's go Met." Now, baseball cards is an art form. Do you consider the baseball cards to be an art form?
We consider them certainly to be a form of popular art, and that's how they really came to our print department as popular printed ephemera being something that was thrown away. It's very ephemeral. Its lifespan was meant to be very short. So when Jefferson R. Burdick, the man who assembled these baseball cards as part of his collection of American trade cards and advertising cards, presented them to the Metropolitan, the curator at the time, Hyatt Mayer, first was hesitant to accept the large group of these cards, over 300,000 of them.
In what form
Originally, they were just in boxes. They didn't really have any order at all.
Well, so many people collect their baseball cards in shoe boxes, and so when you say in boxes, I think a lot of people who have collected baseball cards can identify with that.
Definitely.
Then what happened?
Then he told Mr. Burdick really to go find another suitable location if he could, and Mr. Burdick came back and said, I really feel strongly these should be in the Metropolitan. Hyatt Mayer agreed to take them on the condition that Burdick would assemble them in some kind of order and put them in albums himself, which he did, and he assembled over 650 albums.
When was this?
This was in the early 60s. He died in 1963, and the collection was first accepted in 1961. So they've been at the Metropolitan for over 30 years, and they've been housed in these albums that he created himself.
Never on exhibit.
Not on exhibit of this kind. This is a permanent installation which opened just in May of this year. So it's been exhibited on temporary exhibition, but not in permanent galleries.
So prior to going on a permanent exhibit in May, how did people see these cards?
These cards could be seen by appointment in our print study room of the Department of Drawings and Prints, and the numbers of requests to see the cards became so great that the decision was made by the director's office to put them out on permanent installation so that more people could see them on a regular basis. And in fact, because the cards are displayed in the American Wing, which is normally open on a rotating basis, the great demand to see the Burdick collection and the baseball cards prompted the museum to open the corridor where they're exhibited all the time. So in fact, anytime you go to the museum, you're able to see the baseball cards.
Now, who were the people who requested? Were they collectors? Were they kids? Were they adults with nostalgia? Who was it that made these requests to come in? I'm sure you saw them coming into your study room all the time.
I used to serve in the study room one day a week, and we'd have a variety of visitors. They would be collectors, sometimes dealers, and often young children. We used to require the accompaniment of an adult with as many as 2 younger people, and you had to be as old as 10 to come and see the collection, because the study room is used by a number of scholars and curators who come from all over the world to use our print study room. So you might have had on any given day a world-class scholar researching Rembrandt or Whistler, any number of printmakers we have.
And a youngster with a Yankee cap.
Yes, exactly. It's quite diverse.
And what's the reaction been since you did put them on exhibit?
I think it's been overwhelming. The people have come throughout the summer to see the cards, and I'm sure they'll be coming throughout the holiday season to see them as well. So it's really been very, very popular.
Now this exhibit is going to change. You're rotating them every 6 months?
Yes. The cards were printed on inexpensive cardboard stock. They were originally produced as advertising inserts for tobacco products in the late 19th century. They were first produced in 1887. So these papers are not particularly... they don't stand up to time very well. They're somewhat of a difficult paper as far as conservation goes. They also were printed inexpensively with very ephemeral inks that don't stand up well to the lights, even though we keep the light levels very low for that reason. But 6 months is really about all they can take in the galleries, and then we'll be putting some new ones out.
What do you have to do to prepare them from the albums to your display?
Well, the albums Mr. Burdick assembled were attached. The cards were attached in a variety of ways. He either hinged them in with adhesive tapes that maybe we don't use today because they're not so conservationally sound, or else he put them in with those black photo corners that I know a lot of people have used at home in their photo albums. But over time, this has really not been the best housing for the cards. So in order to serve the public, we've actually taken the cards out of the albums. Our technicians have carefully hinged them in the way we would hinge a fine print with Japanese paste and put them into acid-free mats with mylar to protect them from viewing and to also prevent younger children who might be tempted to touch the cards. Now they're housed in plexiglass cases down in the American Wing.
Those are the ones that are on
Those are the ones that are on exhibit.
But what about the others?
The other ones are in mats, and of course, not all of the collection is in mats at this time. It just would require a tremendous amount of manpower or conservation power, a person to work on that project, as well as funds to really complete the project.
I go back to that original question of baseball cards or trading cards or any type of this card being an art form. With your background, certainly sport is not your field. It's prints that are your field. Do you see this as art? How do you relate it to some of the more, quote, serious things that are in the museum?
Well, I think that American art in particular has always had a very strong popular basis. Americans didn't have the option of studying at academies or learning from a great academic tradition the way maybe the Europeans did from the Renaissance forward. So for Americans, advertising was one way, and certainly printmaking. Many American artists began in engraver's shop producing banknotes. So this type of art, this sort of popular art in America, that the printed baseball cards, are really comparable to something like an American cigar store Indian that's carved out of wood that before people really didn't give much credence to, but over time people have come to realize that this is a major contribution to the broader spectrum of American art. And I think that's what makes American art so exciting, is that it does have this very strong popular strain in it, and it's produced a variety of interesting other aspects in the recent 20th century. And we think of someone like Andy Warhol producing pop portraits and his relationship to so-called popular art. I think it very strongly reflects this tradition in American art.
But Andy Warhol is a form of art that you look at in a museum or in a gallery or in books. But baseball cards are things that every young man and lots of young women were involved with in their growing up period and their grown up period today, because the collecting of cards is still so very popular.
Well, many of the things we have in the print department itself were originally extremely popular. For instance, 15th century woodcuts that were produced as devotional images of the Virgin or of Christ that were pasted into Bibles were preserved merely because they were pasted into the Bible. And they're very striking. They're broadly printed in woodcut with color overlays. So an image like that, which is certainly represented in our galleries, although from the 15th century in Europe, I would say is certainly comparable in terms of it being very popular as well as being very ephemeral. I wouldn't want to put those two in the same category because baseball cards were meant to be extremely cheaply produced, and many more.
Do they because they were produced so cheaply on inexpensive paper with inexpensive inks, does it make the conservation more difficult?
I think it does over time. I'm not a conservator, but I understand this is one of the problems with preserving the vast numbers of cards in the Burdick collection.
And then, of course, we talk about conserving, and we talk about restoring. Would any of these be restored in any sense? If I know that card collectors, from what I've read about it, are certainly very conscious of the condition of a card.
Yes.
If you restore something, it's no longer in its original condition.
Yes, we try to put the best examples of the Burdick collection in terms of condition on display, and that does get to be difficult sometimes. For instance, in the new rotation coming up, we will have the well-known Ty Cobb card from the White Borders series of the American Tobacco Company issue, which dates from about 1909 to 11. And Mr. Burdick had all four of the Ty Cobb cards from that particular series, and unfortunately a couple of them are fairly damaged. He loved to collect the oddities in printmaking, and you'll see if you come to the museum when this display goes up in a short while, that in fact one of the Ty Cobb cards, most of the background is red except for the very top, which is orange. And he loved those slight variations in printmaking. For instance, there's another card in the collection where it's supposed to be a white sock for the White Sox team, but in fact, because the background of the card was red, it appears red. And Mr. Burdick has collected both cards, the one with the white sock as well as the one with the red. And he really liked those kinds of slips.
Of course, that is the Ty Cobbs are not the most valuable cards. I know it's been talked about a lot, and as a matter of fact, we have a book here. We couldn't bring the original here. We have a book here with a card, and this card might give an indication of what?
Well, that card is certainly well known. I think most young collectors as well as older collectors know that that's the Honus Wagner card from the T206 series, also of 1909 to 11, produced by the American Tobacco Company. It took on its own sort of lore because Honus Wagner actually objected to the use of his card in connection with the sale of tobacco products, so that he requested his...
This was a cigarette card.
This was, yes, a tobacco insert card, and he asked that his card actually be removed from production. In fact, a journalist had written him and asked whether he could use the card and be paid for it, and Honus sent him a check saying, "I don't want you to be caught out for the money. Here's what I would give you this so that you don't lose what they would have given you, but please don't use my card. So it was pulled from production, and I think a lot of people know that in 1991 it sold for over $450,000 at auction. So it's taken on quite a lot of, it's received quite a great deal of attention.
And even I know that Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, is the one who bought it.
Yes, and a group of his partners.
And you do have one of those cards in the collection.
It's on view now. Unfortunately, it's going to be coming off of view very soon, but we will have Honus in our next installation.
So what comes is, at some point, there'll be a rotation where they'll come back, I assume, that these valuable cards, or do you not?
We may have to rest Honus a little bit, but
Okay.
we'll bring some other selections from the collection out, and over time we'll try to conserve as many of the cards as we can to bring other examples out that people won't have seen before.
Now, we talked about the fact that these were tobacco cards, the Honus Wagner, and of course, when you move into the modern era in the late 1930s, we started to have candy and bubblegum cards, and Topps Chewing Gum came in there in the late 30s and dominated the field for 40 years, I suppose. And you do have some Topps cards in there, don't you?
Yes, Burdick collected really up until his death, so there are some cards right up through the late 50s and a few cards from the early 1960s. But the strength of his collection is really the early cards when the tobacco companies were in full force producing them. And until the American Tobacco Company formed a monopoly in 1890, there was a lot of competition for various different cards. But once the monopoly was formed, the cards more or less drop out of sight as far as tobacco inserts. It's really not until the period after President Roosevelt was able to successfully break up the tobacco trust that the tobacco companies are back in there again, vigorously competing for their customers by producing these colorful inserts. And that's one of really the great periods of baseball cards, that 1909 to 11 period.
Of course, because they're so valuable, you couldn't bring those cards with you today. But we're lucky because there were so many books that have been written on the subject of baseball cards, and we've been able to get a few of them here. Here's one book that was written, the complete book of baseball cards. Now, I know that this doesn't represent all the cards that you have, and they certainly don't reproduce as well as the originals that you have there, but I think a feeling of what the cards are is given to some of our viewers by looking at these. One of the things that I noted when I was there was that on the display cases there are fingerprints and maybe, as you suggested, nose prints. The proximity, the fact that you could be so close, I think is something that's thrilling to a lot of people.
I think particularly the younger people who haven't seen, for instance, Honus Wagner's card in the flesh or per se, to see the original work of art in the case and as close as one could get to it is really an exciting thing. And I've been down in the installation quite a bit and seen some of these young people get very, very excited over not just Honus's card, but any number of other cards. And really that's what the Metropolitan is all about, is having an opportunity for visitors to really engage with the original work of art and to see that there is a great deal of variety, even in these very cheaply produced cards where the inks were very broadly laid down. There's a great deal of variety and interest in the ways that they vary over a period of over 100 years.
But you say something interesting, seeing the original art. That's not the original art, actually. I remember a few years ago reading about this auction that Topps had of work from its archives, where the original drawings and a lot of the original work, and they sold at fabulous money.
Yes.
I'm not talking about cards. I'm talking about original artwork. The work from which they were made, actually,
right,
including even signed contracts and everything that went in it. But the actual cards is actually what you have there.
Right. Well, when you're dealing with a print, you're dealing with exactly that, a reproducible image, which has been produced from some sort of drawing, or in the case of the baseball cards, often a watercolor, because they were produced in color. So it is, we consider it original, and it's an original print, but it's worked up from some other form of preparatory drawing or watercolor.
Now, you are an assistant curator in the print department?
Yes, Department of Drawings and
Department
Prints.
of Drawings and Prints. How did you come to that? How did... I know you didn't come to it as originally as a baseball fan.
No, I've always been interested in art. Actually, I come from a long line of collectors. One of my great-great-grandparents were the Havemeyers, whose collection was featured at the Metropolitan last spring. But I also have had always a great interest in art. My great-grandmother founded a Museum of American Art in Shelburne, Vermont, called the Shelburne Museum,
Know it well.
devoted to Americana. So I have
One of my favorites.
both of these strains. I would say a very strong European background in 19th century European art, as well as a very strong American background. And I've always been fascinated with art. My mother was an artist. My grandmother was an artist. So I very much enjoy the process itself as well.
And why into print department as opposed to somewhere else?
Well, I had begun working at the Metropolitan as a fellow, working on my dissertation, which was on American drawing books, another very popular form which taught Americans how to draw during the 19th century. And these books were used in the public schools. They were available cheaply. They were often given away as advertisements, and numerous people used them. Learning to draw in those days was about the equivalent of learning computer literacy today, and that it could help you become an architect or a furniture designer or an artist. So these books were fascinating to me because they taught me so much about how Americans came to learn to draw, and more than that, how artists would have used them as well. So those books were housed in the print department at the Met, and that's where I came to learn about the collection. But I worked on them primarily to understand more about painting and drawing in the 19th century.
Define a print for me. Is that a reproduction in one of many forms? Is that how we would define it?
The broadest definition would be that which is a reproducible image. And that could take a variety of forms. There are numerous media today, numerous techniques to produce prints, but they're usually divided into two processes, which would be a relief or a planographic or a chemical process. So we would think of etching, engraving, lithography, woodcuts. Probably everybody's made at one time or another in their kitchen or in nursery school a potato print, which is similar to a woodcut, where you cut into the potato and then you print it with color on a piece of paper. The earliest prints really were woodblock prints, and so they're known to most people.
And I know that prints are valuable for collectors. Numbered prints, I suppose, because the original is the plate is discarded. Is that what makes it rarity, of course, in baseball cards as well as in any other form of art?
Well, a variety of things might make a print rare. Often we do discern between different states of a print, which means that an artist may have modified the plate or the image in a variety of ways. So it's not just how many of them survive. It's often, how fine an impression, if in a technique like dry point, which under the pressures of the press and the printing process might wear down and not create as fine an impression. All these qualities go into discerning really what is a fine print.
And now taking your background, your family background, your own interest, your knowledge, and then marrying it to baseball cards. Did you say, I want to work on this because I'm a Yankee fan or a Met fan or
No, actually,
or a Red Sox
I'm in
fan?
charge, in our department, I'm in charge of the American and British collections, and as such, the baseball cards come into my bailiwick. So this project was really handed to me in terms of this being in my area, and I also cover in numerous other areas, contemporary and 19th century architectural drawings and ornament drawings and American drawings. So it's part of the broad scope of what I cover, and I didn't have any inkling before I came to the Metropolitan that this would be one of the areas I'd be working on.
You have a little background of your own in sports?
Yes, I do. I played a lot of varsity squash in college, so we did compete quite a bit.
So getting into this sports aspect of it must be an interesting direction that you didn't expect to go in your career.
No, I didn't. I really didn't, but it's been a lot of fun.
And do you find that the people who are coming to see this exhibit and the people who saw the collection before it was on public exhibit, are they art enthusiasts? Is it a different type of an audience now?
Well, we hope to really build a new audience for the museum, in fact, and I hope that a lot of the younger people who do come into the museum to see the baseball cards might be lured into some of the other galleries of either the American wing or the Egyptian galleries that also are adjacent to the installation of baseball cards. And I think it's important really to introduce young people in whatever way to whatever art form that's appeals to them, and then to build on that. So I hope through the baseball cards, I hope we'll build a new group and a new force of connoisseurs out there.
So many people who I've talked to on this program in the arts and in museums and in music are constantly telling me that the appeal to young people, introduce them to the arts, whatever they are, get them interested, and so that you can bring them into a further understanding and a further appreciation of art. I think that certainly is something that you're doing over there. So where is it going to lead to? Are you going to be doing more sports things?
Well, people have asked us whether we'd be showing more of the Burdick collection, and there was a small installation in 1976 of the Burdick collection. I think it will be difficult to find space for more of the Burdick collection, but in any event, we can at least show as much of it through the rotations as possible, and that's what we hope to do.
I've been looking at some of the advanced programs at Metropolitan of some of the things that are projected into next year and far into next year, and the scope of what the museum is doing is enormous. And the fact that you bring up is that despite the size of the museum, it is limited in the amount of space that is available.
It is limited, and since we are located in Central Park, we really can't expand much beyond the actual perimeters of the building as they exist now, so we have to make the best use of the space we have.
But there have been expansions.
In the past. And then now I think there's a limit beyond which the Metropolitan is allowed to expand in the present
So the expansions
perimeter.
actually take place within the perimeter,
As I understand it.
Now, this is now a permanent exhibit, so the rotations will take place every 6 months, but people can come now or 6 months from now or hopefully 6 years from now
Yes.
and see part of the Burdick collection.
We hope to keep putting in some surprises and to have people look carefully. And I promise that each installation, at least that I'm involved with, will certainly have a few surprises for people that I don't think they'll expect. So it's really been fun to put together some of the selections from the collection.
And what I like is the fact that posters are now available for some of the cards. Not only have I seen them at the museum shop, but I've also seen them in art stores, in poster stores, framing stores. So certainly you're making access to them something that people can get to
Yes.
without any difficulty.
Those posters are extremely popular, and they can be found everywhere in the Met since they are so popular and they've done so well. Sometimes they're in fact sold out. It's hard to find them.
Well, I'm delighted you could be here today, and I thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Today we have been exploring two phases of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Japanese prints from the 17th century and the baseball card collection. Go to the Metropolitan Museum. There's so much to see and so much to do, and you'll really enjoy it. And I'm Norman Liss, and the name of the program is The Way to Go. Until next week at this time, enjoy yourself.